get started. I'm going to call this work session to order on AO's 2019-149 to AO 2019-155, AO 2020. I guess the first one of the year doesn't get anything else. And AO 2020-2, general obligation bonds, and AO 2020-3, special tax levy dedicated to payment of costs of leasing. Let's go ahead and do introductions, starting on this side.
Pete Peterson.
Mike Salvatore.
Forrest Dunbar.
Christopher Monster.
Suzanne LaFrance.
Felix Rivera.
Matt Wilbur, Office of Management Budget.
All right, so we have lots of subjects to cover, some old, some new. I'll turn it over to Mr. Wilbur.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the Assembly's time today. We're going to do a review of the proposed 2020 bonds. Many of the projects that we're going to talk about today, some of the ones I'm going to highlight, they should all sound familiar because we pulled directly from the approved 2020 capital improvement budget. However, there are some proposed changes and some additions, and they are, and I will highlight those as we go through here. They are with the roads bonds and with the addition of a new area-wide life safety access road bond that we will be proposing to the administration or to the Assembly. So again, one of the things that I'd like to do during this presentation, and I'll focus primarily on the roads and the parks, is just bring the Assembly back to some of the projects that you put on the bonds last year and some of the work that had been done, and I'll talk to you about some of the successes that we did there. I'll just pick a couple highlights of those. Overall, we have a lot of projects going on the road bonds and the parks bonds and these other 6 area-wide. I'm not going to go through each one. But they on the exhibits in each one of the bond packages is a comprehensive list of all of the road projects. And if we get to a point and just ask questions about projects, I invited some folks from project management, engineering, parks, and I think Chief Hetrick will be here pretty soon. And then, so if you guys have questions, we'll move on from there.
Just want to note for the record, we've been joined by Ms. Quinn Davidson on the phone.
To start, for the 2020 municipal bonds, general obligation bonds, and we're going to be focusing only on that. This will not be a conversation about the school district bonds. With the proposed bonds that we put before the Assembly that were introduced on the 17th of December and the ones that we are going to be introducing on Tuesday night for the area-wide safety and the adjustments to the road, the sum total of all of these bonds, if the Assembly approves them, go on the ballot would be a little over $65 million. I'll break down the cost for each one of these. Again, with a few exceptions, probably only 4 projects, all of the projects that we're going to talk about have been approved in the capital improvement program. So we have 8 ballot propositions that will be before the Assembly, and there's a few of them that I want to highlight here on this. The ones with the asterisks, the ARTSA bond. And what we're asking here is we want to add a new project for Northern Lights Boulevard somewhere around the 15th and the 20th of December. We had a culvert collapse under Northern Lights Boulevard in Chester Creek. We literally had to close the road. So it's an immediate and emergency repair we have to get to. It wasn't something we had additionally planned on. So when we were thinking about how we were going to address it, what we're going to do is we're going to adjust the projects that are in the bond and add a little bit more to accommodate for this. There's really no other, we can't really delay for it. We'll talk a little bit about that. I have some pictures to show you. The parks bond, the only reason that started there is that we did make a slight adjustment to the O&M. The projects don't change, just a little adjustment to the O&M. And then the last project on the list, as Mr. Chairman mentioned, was one of the things we're going to talk about, is Assembly Ordinance 2020-2, which is a new ballot proposition that would be out to the voters. It would be area-wide life safety and access roads. I'll talk a little bit more about that, where those projects came from. I think we've been talking about those for some time with the administrator, with the Assembly. So,
I have a question from Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so the breakage over there on Northern Lights near UAA Drive so that's been fixed temporarily, but there's going to be additional work that's going to have to be done when the building season starts. Is that correct?
Yes, and I will show you some. I'll show you some pictures of why I think that's important that we add. Literally, we have 2 60-inch culverts under the ground that are collapsing. They're just going like this, and when it warms up, they're just going to go like that. We need to get it.
All right, thank you.
All right. a little bit of perspective, just to remind the Assembly kind of where our dollars have been spent and what we've been doing in the past. I look back the last 30 years, find out how much general obligation bond the city or the municipality has issued and what we're looking at in the future. If you look back the last 10 years, the amount of additional bonding per resident is basically going to be the same amount of money as we did 10 years ago. And so we're not asking the voters to incur a lot more debt than they have had in the past. I will say that if we just look back to 1990, 30 years ago, the voter bond indebtedness was $181 per resident. The rate of inflation has been almost 100% in the 30 years. If we were to do that same amount of work in 2020, the bond number would be about $360 million. So if you're just looking proportionality about the cost. So if you account for inflation, that's what it is. So basically in the last 10 years, the inflation rate's been about 20%. In the last 20 years, it's been roughly 50. And in the last 30, it's been almost 100. So you can see that our bond buying, the rates in which we're getting are continue to be very good. So, and that has a lot to say with our AA or our AAA bond rating. So it's a great time to keep investing in infrastructure. So again, the proposed bonds on the ballot, if we include everything that we're proposing, including the adjustments, the total amount would be about $65.2 million. It's also, I think, the administration and the Assembly and the public are always interested to know what is the total amount of our bond, GO bond debt, and is it going down? It continues to go down since 2015. And as we've mentioned before, and Mr. Slifka has mentioned in the past, our bond rating continues to be excellent. So the bond issues that we get, we will get excellent rates.
Ms. Kennedy?
Thank you. You might have already said something about this and I missed it, but in terms of the bond debt and what we're asking for this year, or what we could be asking for this year, one of the things that the school district always uses is that number that says we are retiring this much compared to how much we're trying to have approved. So what can we say, what can the municipality say about that?
So the amount of debt that we're going to retire in this year is $35 million in total. The amount that we're going to ask the voters to propose is 65. If you took the 35 million and looked at the dollar amount of that today, it's about $55 million. In the school district's world, when they issued bond debt, it was also based on the assumption that they were going to have half of their debt repaid, and that's not going to be in the arena. So, and it is a fact that they are planned to issue less than they're retiring, but if you look back at the value of what they're going to retire, they're not keeping up. They need, and I think as the school board and members of the school administration mentioned a couple weeks ago, or earlier this week, they are woefully behind. So I would say that yes, it's true, they're going to issue less than they're retiring, but in order for them to sort of keep up and maintain kind of what we're doing, we need to issue more than when we're retiring just to deal with inflation.
Can I continue on that?
Sure.
You know, and I absolutely understand that. And yes, the school district will tell you that they are not keeping up with their deferred maintenance list, and the list gets bigger, and that's true. But the message that they send to the public is what's important. And what you just told me, though, was there is a decrease in the bond indebtedness.
Yep.
So if we're always asking every year for almost twice as much as what we're retiring, how is it that total bond number is decreasing?
Remember, those bond numbers that reflect there are bond numbers from the past. They're
Right, so at some point we have issued fewer bonds than we have paid, or yes, we've issued fewer than we've paid off. So are you just saying that this year we're actually asking for more than we're paying off?
Yep.
Okay, but technically in years past, it has been the other way.
No, last year we did pretty much the same thing. Last year
Okay.
we retired roughly, I think, $38 million, and we asked for 55.
Okay, so again, then my question is, and I guess I'm asking for some real specifics, but in 2000, no, go back where you were.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That last, yeah, the last one is where you've got that 2015 was 445 million.
Mhm.
Okay, so in 2019 it's 403. Somehow we got to the point where we were issuing less than we were paying off. So how did we get there in those last 4 years?
I will find out. I don't know.
I guess there's two things that happen. A, we're asking the public permission to borrow, and the second piece is how much do we actually borrow. So
To actually
we have
sell off.
at least 100 million bonds that have been authorized but not yet issued.
So you could actually add another 100 million to that 403 million?
If we could
If
do
we
all
sold
the
it.
we that had been authorized, we could issue those bonds.
Okay, that's
But we
important.
can only do X amount of work, and so, you know, as we ask for bonds, but we don't issue them all. That's how that number has slowly come in.
Okay, then that leads me to another question then. Does that mean that there is $100 million worth of potential bonds to be issued should we decide at any moment to do that? They've already been approved.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's important.
Thank you. Mr. Constant?
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Yes.
Absolutely.
So, I want to spend a few minutes talking about some of the projects that were on our bond and ARTSA, Anchorage Roads and Drainage Service Area for Mr. Dyson. So last year we had a couple projects on here, Love Cove drainage projects, and then Tudor Center Drive and Diplomacy over off of Tudor Road. This one was originally in the 18 bond, and we made some adjustments, put it in 19, and got it done, so you can kind of see on the upper right some of the improvements that have happened there. Over in Pleasant Valley, had a lot of road improvements. This is a multi-year phase development. We also will have additional bond funds added into proposed in the 2020 bond to continue that work. The Chester Creek culvert replacement, this is some of the very similar work that you see on Providence Drive. If you look in the bottom right corner, that is generally what we're going to have to do over on Northern Lights Boulevard when we tear it out, put it back in. Literally, it's going to be a big work. So what's that? I think it is. I do think it is for us. I do think it is. I was thinking, is that Waldo? No, that's actually the mayor. So on 2020, so here's a couple, or on 2019, there's a couple more. We've been very active in the traffic calming arena. You can see some traffic circles that have been put out in neighborhoods. And then some storm drain improvements. Those you might think it's relatively simple to do, but these catch basins are pretty significant and massive. Basically, the drainage is coming in from all directions of streets, catches here and then moves out through our storm drain system, and then continue to do some pedestrian safety. Some examples over in East Anchorage and in Fairview. For 2020, the proposed road bond includes Image and Reflection Drive. Again, we've talked about this. It's a neighborhood over that has a lot of drainage problems, some severe pavement problems going on there. That's about $3.5 million to do that one. We continue to work on our downtown lighting. It's about another $1.5 million worth of work. And then Pleasant Valley, we'll continue to work on Pleasant Valley. I think that one's another $3.5 million in Pleasant Valley. Repaving the old Seward Highway is part of our program, and then doing some resurface on 36th Avenue. The project here will actually go from the new Seward to Lake Otis at some point, but the part we're going to do it in phases and start on 36th Avenue. Again, it should not sound new. We talked about many of these when we do plans. Some of the other things that we do is area-wide storm drain improvements. Here's some examples here. I think the one on the top is one of the storm drain improvements we're looking at is over in 42nd Avenue. That project is still in design phase, and then that one is also in the bond for future years. And the total amount of that job going from Lake Otis over to Marina, which is just north of Tudor, it's about 6 blocks. It's roughly $23 million, and about half of that will be in right-of-way. So we've got a lot of work to do before we get there, but there's a lot of work being done, and then continue to work on our pedestrian improvements. So,
one question, Ms. Alto.
Thank you. On that 42nd Street project, I mean, it had to be patched again and again. Is there any kind of better interim solution other than just, or are we just going to deal with it every time it breaks? because there's some really, really frustrated residents over there who lose access to their water. Always seems to happen during the winter. I'd love any kind of, I mean, we've got the timeline for the plan, but the plan takes us out to 2024.
So I'll start, and then if I'll have project management and your street management. So right now, we are in a break fix mode until we get the design done. And the situation on 42nd is not unique to 42nd. It's literally all over Anchorage and places like this. A lot of the projects that we've been working on and that we will be working on, the subdivision improvements and Pleasant Valley and the ones that we did over in the Sand Lake area, they all started this way. And each one is about a $15 to $25 million number. There's no way we can do them all. So this one here is in a design phase. We have another in a design phase. If you look at the other subdivisions around the community that are in a similar situation, unfortunately, their design phase doesn't even start until 2023 and 24. So right now, Ms. Alatel, I think we are going to be in a break-fix situation. We get that design done and then do a complete rebuild. The other thing I would say, even if we had the ability to put all of the money in the year, as many of you are aware, we wouldn't be able to deliver it until that timeline gets done. So that's kind of the situation. We take a lot of attention to make sure that we budget and we bond for what we can deliver.
Can I ask a follow-up? Is there a better repair solution though? I mean, that's kind of, because I feel like the repair isn't quite holding.
So what I will do is I'll talk to street maintenance and at PM&E. What we might be able to do is, and we'll look at the condition of the surface, but we may be able to just run an entire patch from one end to the other, and that may help. Rather than just doing little segments of blocks, if we just did maybe a couple blocks. But I'll find out from them where the most urgent need is, and maybe the right thing to do is just put a temporary patch right over the top of the entire street.
Yeah, because these patches aren't inexpensive either, so.
Well, the little ones aren't, but the
Well, yeah, but
we can totally look at that.
constant kind of cycle gets to add up as well, so, okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
We'll
Thank
do
you. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so at the University Community Council meeting the other night, they were debating whether to pass a resolution to encourage the Assembly to get 42nd Avenue fixed this coming summer. And I told them flat out that that was not possible. You can't fix something when you haven't even designed the repairs yet. And the design is at 35% right now. And so it's just not possible to do it this year. The earliest it could possibly be done would be 2021, and that would be a stretch.
And I think we could talk about this one at length, but I do think that as every project in all these neighborhoods, we'll get through a design, and one of the things that's going to come through a design in order to meet urban standards on that street, there's going to be a lot of issues probably related to right-of-way. It's pretty narrow right now. Whether or not we have it in all the right spots, that's going to be a discussion. And if there is a significant amount of right-of-way, that will prolong the length, and as it should, because we need to make sure that we're doing that accurately and properly. So, yep, I think the response is right on. Okay. So here is the project that the administration is proposing to add to the Hartsville Road bond. The total amount of the improvement is about between $6 and $7 million. Since the design isn't done, the design is we're hiring a contractor right now to bring them on board. But when you look at the cost of what it took us to do Providence, and you look at the scale of the improvement we're going to have to do, this is a very reasonable estimate for between $6 and $7 million. So what the administration did is we looked at three options. One is we looked at the list of the projects that were on the existing bond and tried to find $6.5 million worth of stuff to take off in order to put this one in. And we didn't think that was a good idea either. So one of the other ideas we did is we looked at the projects that we recently put into that would be on the bond as a result when we adjusted Academy. 15th Avenue has been that would be the next project that we would either add in or take out. So when we adjusted for Academy, we put 15th Avenue back in. And so 15th Avenue repaving would go to 2021, which is where it was before we made some adjustments to Academy. The other thing we did is we we had West 62nd and East 33rd from Spenard over to, or from Arctic over to Old Seward Highway. But that project was in the bond for $2.5 million. When we made the adjustment for Academy, we made it 4. What we're proposing is put it back to 2.5, is where it was. So the sum of those two is $3 million, and then add $3.7 million to the road bond for the balance of Northern Lights Boulevard, which would bring the total road bond from $39.3 to $43 million. And so this is the proposal that we would move forward. And maybe before we go, this picture is maybe a little difficult to see, but the picture on the right, I'll just get up and show it on the planner. The only thing that's really missing from this picture in the culvert is the culvert. This is the creek, and this culvert, you can see the pipe is supposed to go around. And here, there is no pipe supporting the structure of the pipe. So we need to get in there and get it fixed. And whether we do it this way or take some other projects out, there's really no other way to get it there.
Mr. Chair, was that a previous design standard?
I don't know, I'll let Russ.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Was that a previous design standard where we took a culvert and chopped the bottom off?
No.
I mean, how
No,
did that
this culvert, through the chair, this culvert has, and we think it's 30 to 40 years old. Like, I think off the top of my head, it's just rusted away.
Okay.
The line you see there is the average water level, and below the water, the culvert's rusted away over time.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar?
Yeah, so 2 things. I was going to be annoyed because we did a lot of work getting that funding out of Academy, but now I remember I asked you for what were the next projects on the priority list, so in a way it makes logical sense that these would be the first to be removed, given that everything else was judged to be a higher priority before we made that change. So my question is, so where exactly in Northern Lights was it? And then I know we have money for a major RECA, so I think it's also the Chester Creek culvert, is that right? Or is it a different, underneath RECA there's a large storm drain and culvert system that's going to be rebuilt for the RECA upgrade, right?
Yes.
Is that the same, is it the same culvert just continued, or is that one go
Through
north?
the chair, I believe it's a different section. It's a different fork of Chester Creek. This is the
Okay.
fork that runs south through the university and across the Northern Lights.
Okay, so the RECA, because the RECA portion goes to the sort of north fork of Chester Creek, is that right?
Correct.
Yep.
And this is the south fork.
Yes.
Okay, and then when we're doing this construction, obviously I am on the Northern Lights, probably more road than any other road in my life. Like, where exactly are we going to be sort of shutting down?
This is just west of where I believe it's UAA Drive comes in. So it's between UAA and Lake Otis Parkway.
So here's UAA Drive, here's Lake Otis. So it's right in here.
Right where the King Career Center driveway is, right
Yep.
very near there.
Okay, because I feel like we've also pretty recently done significant construction just a little bit further to the west of there. But maybe that was only a loop pipe they were laying?
It was a water pipe.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not aware of a street project.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Alto?
Yeah, what's the do nothing option?
The
What
do
does that
nothing
mean?
option is that we wait for the road to collapse and we divert all of the traffic off of Northern Lights Boulevard until we fix it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Quick answer. Always like to know what the do nothing option is.
Okay, so again, just for the Assembly's benefit, you have AO 2019-149 is the road bond. Well, we are going to be, you will have an amended road bond on the addendum for this particular purpose, and the AM explains what I've just told you. Okay, so the new road bond number will be 43. So, moving on to Parks and Recreation. Parks Department has been doing a great job, and they continue to develop and implement parks and trails and playground improvements. And they've been, last year the road bond, the parks bond was at $3.95 billion, and this year the parks bond is proposed to be at the same amount. So some work that they've been doing, some single track work over at Chester Creek, the new bridge out at Westchester Lagoon has been some of the work that was on previous bonds. Some creek restoration out on Campbell Creek on the stream bed and some trail rehab. They're going to continue that along portions of Campbell Creek. Some ADA improvements that were at the sports complex down off of 16th down in Mulcahy. Some ADA improvements, the work that had been done down there. For 2020, they're going to continue to do some trail rehab and work. This picture on the left is on Campbell Creek Trail. You can see some segments. The red highlights where the trail has really, really beat up. If you've ever walked or ridden your bike along those trails, the roots are nasty. I think there's even paint on places where it says, just to warn you. So Parks Department, they're doing a great job, some illustrations of what they're doing. But then continuing improvements of wayfinding. As I've been using the trail system, you'll notice that those big solid posts that stick up pretty high with new wayfinding. So those are on part of the improvements. They have many park improvements. Some of them are continuations of work in the past, but here's a couple right here. The Taku Park, that's really going to be looking for playground equipment, some parking lot improvements. Takishla Park, similarly, doing some all-inclusive playground work. Again, excellent work to be done there. Chanchling Park, this is a phase 2. This is continuing of work that we had some bond money in 19. This is continuing that work in 2020, similar to Elderberry Park. And I just throw an example, one of this, they have a lot of work going on, I think, at Frontier Park as well as Jewel Lake Park. There's a picture of Jewel Lake Park, some new playground equipment that will be going on there. That's a depiction of a ship, I think, that's like at Jewel Lake Park. So that's what's parks and roads and parks. So the next two bond propositions I want to talk about on this slide are area-wide public safety and the transit bond. It's about $5 million. The Anchorage area-wide radio network, as you recall, I mentioned that one of the things that this project will do, it basically allows us, the system itself allows multi-agencies to talk to each other, but the upgrades here will allow more bandwidth and more channels out of the Eagle River area, Birchwood, Chudiak, and a little bit down in South Anchorage. And we are looking to purchase 4 ambulances. Last year we bought 2. This year we're looking at buying 4. And then the LifePak cardiac monitors. I put a couple asterisks by this one, Mr. Chairman, because this is a project that we would adjust if and we'll talk about it a little bit later, AO 2020-3 has to do with the leasing. If that passes, what we would do, we would not purchase this. So basically what would happen is we would do it through a purchase process. We would ask the voters, if they pass that and they pass this, what would happen is we just won't issue this $400,000. That's how it would work. Okay? For transit has a lot of FTA money coming in the door recently, like about $12 million. And so they need match for that. Information systems, some facilities, and then a little bit of fleet of and equipment. And so, again, the area-wide public safety, this is area-wide, so it goes basically from Chudiak all the way down to Girdwood, so an important piece of that. The other thing that we're looking at is area-wide facilities. We had an area-wide facilities bond last year. All of these projects were on that bond last year. There were also a couple others that we took off. The Anchorage Senior Center, there's a lot of work to be going on. Boilers, seismic improvements, roof improvements, code upgrades, both for Anchorage and for Chudiak Senior Center. A lot of work to be done there. In the LUSAC, as a reminder, we have 4 elevators that were not replaced when we did the remodel. They are further into the library. Those are the same elevators that I think have been there since '82. We're really struggling trying to keep them operating, so they do need to be replaced. There's also some other safety work being done there. So those are the highlights of the area-wide public safety and transit and the area-wide facilities bonds.
A couple questions, Ms. Salatel?
Thanks. First, I'd like to say ambulances are always a great deal. $350,000 for a hospital on wheels, amazing. But why isn't the East High School pool on here? Because isn't it still closed due to substantial damage from the earthquake? Yes.
It is, and I don't know. Maybe Alan. The question was the East High School pool. Why is it not on the bond? And is it still closed?
Because that facility, although we manage it, is actually owned, the building is owned by the school district. They are handling all the renovations or the repairs on that structure. Until they get the structure fixed, it cannot be reopened. There's problems with one of the walls has structural issues.
So, yesterday we had a discussion, or 2 days ago, so 2 days we had a discussion about the school bond, and I asked the same thing, and they said, well, you guys own the pool. So,
I will sort that out, but the answer that when we applied for FEMA money, that structure, because it's attached to the structure of the school district,
Sure.
the actual school, it went into their repair cycle with FEMA. The ones that are independent, like Service and Bartlett, we totally own and maintain those and do all the maintenance, all the capital repairs. Any capital work for those, East is an example, will be done by the school district. And I'll verify that. But that's been the position they took since the day after the earthquake.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy?
Yeah, just on following up on that, yeah, I would appreciate some clarification too, because there is on the school district bond money for East High. It was left out of the PowerPoint that they did, but when I looked back at the bond itself, it's the way it's written, includes East, and my understanding is that it is a structural issue on the connection to the pool, but I've also heard that there was actual damage in the pool itself, which does beg the question of, is there two different things going on? So it would be nice to have clarification.
Thank you. Mr. France?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nancy may have mentioned this already. I apologize for missing it. Is there an operational component to any of these
Yes.
bonds then? And
Yes,
It's already included?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I can summarize each one, but in total, the O&M per 100, so yes, there's an O&M when we are adding or we are whether they're adding to existing or adding a new facility, but if it already exists and we're replacing it, we do not have it. For total O&M for all of these projects, if they were approved for the new ones, I think it's like $1. I think it's like $1.50 for everything. In the O&M, in the debt, it's about $16 per 100,000 total, roughly.
Ms. Kennedy?
Thank you. Just in talking about those cardiac monitors, a lot of times there's a lot of community pushback on items that are small like that and actually have a little bit shorter lifespan than some of the vehicles and that we're talking about. So was there any other conversation about how that would could actually be taken out, especially since there's the idea of doing the special tax instead and not doing an either or, but sometimes it is little things like that that will basically be the downfall of a bond.
So the answer to your first question is yes, absolutely. That is why we have this other proposal on here, which would create a special tax to fund things like cardiac monitors rather than bonding for them. And so the question is, do we take the cardiac monitors off of this and not put that in the total amount of the bond, and we bring forth the other proposal, which is to basically put a lease program together and pay the debt on the lease program that would include cardiac monitors. The thing that we need to know and think about is if that goes forward and fails, they don't have any bond money to replace cardiac monitors.
Correct.
So that is the trade-off that we can definitely certainly have that conversation. We've had that conversation as well. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Oh, and actually, one more question. Do you happen to know what the lifespan of a cardiac monitor typically is?
I'm going to phone a friend.
Oh,
Hi, sorry.
yeah.
The LifePak cardiac monitors basically have a service life of 7 years. However, because we have been using this mechanism, and I'll talk to this a little bit more in depth when we talk about the lease program and the benefits to that, because we've been funding the cardiac monitors this way, we can only replace a few every year. We have many cardiac monitors that are 12 to 20 years old, which is, yes, not a good thing at all. So we agree this is not the best way to go, but we are concerned that if we don't pass the other one, and we don't pass this, then that puts us even further behind.
Thank you.
Okay. And I think, I'll just add one, when you see the proposed ordinance to put that on the ballot in the, I believe it's in the AM, there's an explanation on the back. Not only would we not issue this 400,000 if that passed, we would not issue the number that we actually got the authorization to do so in 19. We wouldn't do that one either. We wouldn't do that one, we wouldn't do this one if we had that as an alternative. It's all explained in the ordinance when you take a look at
Yeah,
that.
I
So
did look a little bit.
follow up on that one. Okay. Again, I mean, honestly, the senior centers, they need a lot of work, and the library, those 4 elevators in the library, we really need to get those fixed. So let's see. The other couple bonds that we have on there are one for police and one for fire. And for the fire bond, remember, while the area-wide EMS is in the fire department, it's an area-wide service, even though the resources go to the fire department. The fire department is a different service area, so it's a different bond. So for fire equipment, a new ladder truck, here's just an example of a ladder truck for those who might not know what they look like, but they're modified. This is going to, obviously will be a newer model, but this is one from, I think it's like Station 12. The shop expansion on it. For those of you who don't know, the shop was built in 1983 when we had a totally different makeup of fleet. I think we've added 4 fire stations or 5 since that time. The shop needs a little bit of work. It also needs at least 1 bay of expansion. So So the first phase would be to do a design, figure out exactly what their needs are, what their improvements would be, and then we would bond for the capital work in a future year. So those are the big things. And then some facility improvements. Most of that has to do with electrical, I think, and heating over in Fire Station 1. And then the other thing that we're proposing to do is to bond for the APD fleet. Basically, these are going to continue to be hybrid vehicles that we would put on the bond. We've done this before. That $2.4 million would be for 36 police vehicles. So,
Mr. Dillon,
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. When was the last time, and how often do we bond for police fleet? And I'm a little concerned that we'll get some pushback from the public on that. There's something about it. Let me look at a ladder truck. It's clearly something that is out of the ordinary, custom built. It feels more like a capital good than these, which are basically SUVs that we purchase. They're not quite commercial, but they're close. Why isn't it basically operational dollars in the police department that are going to police vehicles rather than bond funds?
Yeah, in the past, we have put about $2.8 million in the M&O's budget for fleet purchase. What they do then is they buy between $2.3 and $2.4 million worth of police cars, and they have $400,000 left to buy 1 piece of heavy equipment and a sweeper and maybe something else. So what this plan is in 2020 is to bond for all of the police cars, and I will find out when the last time we did this. And then our fleet, they have more ability and more flexibility to buy the heavy equipment that they are not bonding for. I mean, I guess we could have thought about bonding for the heavy equipment, but we did not. And the plan when we built the capital improvement program was this. We presented this when we built the CIP that we would bond for the fleet. But I will find out the last time we did that.
Okay, follow. Is this the only? So I know in the past we've done things like security fences and the like for the police department. Is this the only
Yes.
police request?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Ms. Hamilton?
And thank you. And why couldn't this be part of the lease? Like, why can't we lease our police cars?
There's a short answer and a long answer.
I can start with the short.
The short answer is that every jurisdiction has its own special police-equipped vehicle, and when we buy these things, we buy them as part of a larger buy. When Dallas or Pittsburgh or LA buys them, we get in there when we find one of those places that has a fleet that looks like ours. We're buying into their production cycle.
So that it's cheaper?
Basically, that's what it is. It's not that I don't think it's impossible that they can be leased, but I can find out more on that. But that's generally why we do it this way.
Can I ask a quick follow-up to that?
Sure.
Do we use a group purchasing organization?
Yeah, Alan, the question was, do we use a group purchase organization? We buy fleet, we buy cop cars. Do we go in with another group, or is that
Yes,
our
we
own?
normally attach to the state of Alaska because they use a very similar outfitting that we do. They're all-wheel drive, all the above. So we use their thing on their contracts. We get a pretty good deal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're down to the last 5. Girdwood, we've talked a lot about what's going on in Girdwood. Again, this is this would be a bond that would be for the replacement of the Glacier City Hall and Little Bears facilities down there. Basically, they use this for a lot of purposes, including a child care facility, needs a lot of code upgrades and replacement. What would happen is that the bonds would be issued, the residents of Girdwood would pay for the bond for this $2.2 million. You will see a change. The first AO 2020-1, we had, when we originally submitted Girdwood, the Girdwood Board of Supervisors, after it was drafted, they had some significant changes they wanted to the language as it related to O&M and then bond indebtedness. And so we took their recommendations, we reviewed with bond counsel, we agreed with them. Rather than create an S version and line it all out, so you had to track it, we're just going to scrap the one that was initially proposed, and AO to 2020-1 will be the Girdwood proposed ballot measure. So that's why it's brand new. The amount of money, the scope of work did not change. It's just the way in which the debt and the O&M was illustrated in the original. We modified that. That's the change.
Mr. Constant?
Anticipate any risk in that strategy? Separating out, or are we going to run them together? The Girdwood bonds separately?
It will be a separate ballot measure.
That just seems like a risk for them.
The other alternative would we would have added into the area-wide facilities. That would have been the other alternative. But the Girdwood Board of Supervisors was very strong in their opinion that they wanted this to be only on. They wanted it to be standalone. They didn't want it to be married with libraries or senior centers or something else. They really wanted it by themselves. So honor the request, and we can't do it that way.
Since it wasn't clear, only Girdwood will be paying for that bond.
Right.
Okay, so we don't vote on it.
And we vote on it.
We also put a general obligation. So we will include that quota that we've added to all of the bond properties now. This will be paid for exclusively in property taxes in the River Valley service area and without cost to the Anchor Bowl, Chicago River.
Yep. Thank you, Bill.
Okay,
Thank you.
so-
Ms. Kennedy?
And thank you. And further clarification, it would actually have to pass in Girdwood.
Yes.
Not, it's not that Anchorage could force it on them. It has to
Right.
pass
Right.
both places for it. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
That's exactly correct. Thank you, Bill. So, as I mentioned earlier, we introduced 7 ballot measures. The roads we want to modify, or we're modifying. This one you haven't seen yet. This one was not introduced on the 17th when we put it in December. But this is an idea that the administration has been working on. We've been talking to folks in Chugach River, folks in other parts of town here, and I think Mr. Falsey has mentioned this, that we were thinking about doing this. A lot of conversations with the fire department, with traffic engineering, and a variety of other folks. The purpose of this proposed area-wide life safety access road bonds, that it would be specifically for the purpose of providing new links where the need for emergency access is limited. It could be as a result of there's only kind of one way in and one way out, and there needs to be some improvements for better circulation. I mean, I think on the hillside, some of the examples of the McHugh Creek fire kind of brought up the issue that we're really kind of limited up on the hillside. And so here's 3 pictures here. I'm sorry, but these 3 graphics are the same graphics that are in your assembly memorandum, so they should look relatively familiar. One of them is Boundary Avenue and Boundary Drive. So this is over this is east of Muldoon. I'm sorry, in Muldoon, so you can see the Boundary Avenue connection to I think it's I forgot the name of the street. What is it, Forrest?
I
What's
believe
that?
it's Centennial Circle.
Yeah.
Centennial Circle, thank you. So that would be the connection there. The one in Eagle River, this one here is a little bit, the graphic in the center is a little bit difficult to see, but I'm going to stand up here. The white lines are rows. This is Colbert Road right in here. Somehow the idea would be to connect this white line to this white line. And these are hills that are going this way, so the exact alignment is not known, but the general concept would be to connect this street with this street over here. We would spend some money to do some design on that one.
And it's actually in Chudiak,
In Chudiak.
this middle.
Oh, Colbert said, yeah.
And then the last one is Mountaineer Drive. For those of you who don't know, that little red box up there is elementary school. That's where Fire Station 10 up at Rabbit, or up in, yeah, up the top of Clean River. Rabbit Creek Road. So,
Yeah, Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on the Boundary Ave project, very familiar with that area. I'm not so familiar with what is in between. I feel like there might be a steep gradient there. Is that right? And well, regardless, it's only $500,000. What I'm kind of trying to think if you could actually build that for $500,000. So my first concern is kind of what this will look like, and is $500,000 too low of an estimate? Maybe someone PM&E can speak to that. And then second is, what you're basically doing is linking a large apartment complex on Boundary, a condo project, to a very large senior center north of there. And I think it's a great idea, but I do wonder if you might get some unintended pushback from the senior center. And so I guess my question is, what's the contemplated reach out to the senior center about this construction project?
Through the chair, a couple of questions there. One, the $500,000 is the design start. That's not the full construction cost. That's to do the design study report and come up with the best solution.
Yeah.
And with respect to community contact, we haven't had any yet. That would happen as part of the public contact process early in the design stage.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy?
Thank you. I'm probably going to throw a wrench in the works here, but I just got a call this morning from the Birchwood Community Council that has actually come out and is opposing this plan. And I haven't had a chance to talk to Debbie Osiander yet, but I think the understanding with this whole concept, and this might be a good time to really explain what all this leads into, because this is just a part of it, but this was to be able to access matching federal funds. Is that my correct understanding on that?
Typically in part, the federal funds are available in that area, but generally they're for the much larger segment. It was also for Girdwood and Chudiak, Eagle River, Subursa area to allow us to build these new road segments as an entire community, because Subursa is not in the business of building municipal connections in the same way that other portions of town.
We don't build roads, we maintain them, yes, no. Okay, but these are still, okay, here's my question too, is there was a distinction between those that were in a service area and those that were not, is that correct? Because I know the one in Chudiak is in a service area, Subursa, but the ones on Hillside were not?
The Mountaineer Drive is not in the service area, but the Boundary Avenue is an art zone. So there is a distinction in the sense that under the status quo, we could maintain or potentially ask just particular service areas to try to shoulder the cost of building these roads. So you could imagine a different plan proposition where we said, may Subursa borrow $500,000 to build this road. But the discussion was, for these life safety access roads, the first and second fire apparatus worthy road, that we're all as a community going to invest in green.
Okay, well, I think that might be some of the pushback then, is trying to figure out who's got the burden of paying for this, especially if this is just design money. Do we have any figures on what the full build out could be? We do, so.
I think we probably have only back the envelope estimates right now.
Well, that would be helpful.
So, through the chair, I'm going off memory. I think we estimated the Boundary Road project at around $1 million, and I can get that information to you probably early next week.
Well, I'm specifically interested in Colbert.
And Colbert, I think, I want to say we estimated that in the $5 to $8 million range.
Okay.
It's a relatively tough ground. It's somewhat steep and it's mostly undeveloped. And I believe it was about 1,500 linear feet of road.
Okay.
But I can get accurate information. The best accurate information we have, I can get that to you this afternoon.
To be clear to the chair, my understanding is that the Culver project is not a project that would likely ever be able to draw down AMAT's money because it is not a collector level road. So then the alternative is, do we never build it? Does Subversa pay for it entirely? Or as a community, do we spread that out because it's a necessary connection and helps relieve some of those pinch points? And we have been pushing in the direction of the final option, that we will all pitch in and do this together. If there are folks that we can talk to have more conversation about that, we're happy to do that. I'll say for general visibility, we knew we were sort of rushed for time because we had only adopted this area-wide power late in the fall. But we did reach out to Subversa and say we found our old 2005 era priority list of what you guys had identified, which is the first road that you want to go for. They were a little jammed for time too, but it sounded like Colbert was the consensus choice. So we're hoping to find the community project everybody likes.
Thank you. And I appreciate that. And let me just say that this, like I said, this just came up this morning from Birchwood Community Council, so I don't have a good handle on what the thought is, so I have to make some phone calls too. So we'll probably have more information by Tuesday. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. LaFrance?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Falsey, could you speak to the 100,000 for Mountain Air and the matching portion? I think this is for what we talked about before, the potential federal grant or lands.
Yep, that's exactly right. This 100,000 will be matching the capital work for the project because it's going to be, I don't know what the current estimate is, probably 3 to 5 million depending on the route at least. This project,
a lot more than that, but that's right. So for these larger roads, this one is not only eligible for federal funds through the AMAT process, but it's actually been programmed for federal funds through the AMAT process for years. We haven't been able to draw those funds down. So the Mountain Air project would be a $500,000 project or more, much like Boundary and Colbert, but for the fact that we were only having to make the local match to draw down federal funds, so we can complete the rest of that.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Constant?
So I wouldn't think downtown has a number of these, but I would love to have a chat about one very specific area that could use some investment in this.
And on that point, I'll say that we picked these projects because Mountain Air has long been programmed for federal funds. We wanted to finally complete that because it was identified in the Hillside White Paper from 2007 and then re-identified after the McHugh Creek fire by the fire department. We picked Boundary because we asked the fire department to go out and do kind of a survey and an analysis of where they think they have experienced problems in the past and where some priority missing connections would be, and that one was close to the top of their list. And we picked Colbert because we did want to sort of socialize the fact that this is an area-wide tower, so we asked Subversa where the missing pieces, and we had their 2005-2006 era priority schedule. Going forward, there has been an unfinished task in the land use planning effort for the 2040 plan to do a stepped-out analysis of where the missing connections are in order of priority. We've not ever really engaged in that work yet because we have no way to pay for it, even after we did the analysis. But Michelle McNulty, now that this all exists, has said that is coming to traction, so that by the time we're doing this spot next year or in 2021, that we would have sort of a master plan, so we take an area-wide look at where the missing connections are, and here's the way we should start working.
Thank you. I want to note for the record, we've been joined by Mr. Perez-Verdia and Mr. Dyson. Go ahead.
okay. So this is the last slide of the bonds. These are the bond ballot propositions that the roads, the parks, area-wide facilities, area-wide public safety, Girdwood, and this one here. This would be the total amount of the total measures. And if we incorporate all of the proposed changes in those things, again, it's about $65 million into, back to Ms. LaFrance's questions about the total amount of debt service for all of the ones in the Anchorage area, not including Girdwood, and the reason I want to separate it, but if you don't include that one, it's about $16, a little less than $16 in debt service, and it's about $2 in O&M, so roughly $18 per 100,000. So it'll be about $55 roughly for the average home. Girdwood, that one passes for the folks in Girdwood, since they're paying for it, the debt service to them, it's is going to be roughly $25 to $30 per 100,000. And the O&M for them is pretty small, it's like $1. So it's separate for them, and they're the ones that are going to be in charge of that. So it wouldn't be fair or correct to say that that would be the total debt for everyone, because it would not be. So anyway, that's what's going on in the bond. Now, back to the conversation that we talked about, and I'm going to switch gears on you to go from a ballot, or from the bond propositions, to one of the ballot measures that's not a bond prop, but that would affect the bond, and that's the one that Chief Hetrick was talking about. So AO 2020-3, and I'm going to really need to phone some friends up here now. But basically what we're doing here is, this is really sort of a new approach to how we would be supporting our emergency medical equipment in our acquisition. We would do it through a leasing process rather than through bonds. Now, there's a lot of benefits to doing it this way. The Chief had mentioned a couple of them. One is we will have some predictability in the amount of equipment that's coming in the door. We'll also have some uniformity in the amount of equipment that's coming in the door. Because when you're buying it years over year, the technology changes, and the amount of equipment that you get and the way in which you have to maintain it, you have to keep up with various pieces of technology. And then there's the issue, I think, that there's a step level of reliability. I would say that, and not to steal Mr. Falsey's thunder, but I think he did a good job. I mean, we have probably, I would say, C++, B+ type of equipment inside this. This arrangement will really bring A++ type of equipment to emergency medical services. So there's a great summary, and the amount of equipment, the type of equipment, and in the leasing program, it includes equipment that's not on the bond. The bonds are pretty much the life packs and chest compressions, but this program is going to include a lot of the types of equipment that you see here. I think the one that I don't know if it's Chief LeBlanc that started it, but one of the things they had is these power gurney loaders. When they're in a tight spot and they have to lift someone that weighs 400 to maybe 600 pounds, when you have some support, having that equipment and making it reliable is very important. So I do believe there's probably over 1,000 pieces of types of equipment that would be in this arena. So instead of bonding for those things, we're looking at putting together this program. We put it out to the voters. I think the annual cost to the voters would be about $800,000 a year to support this lease for a 10-year window, and it would be primarily for these purposes. So the last thing I would mention is that the other thing that the program would do is we have a lot of the type of equipment that we would have, not only for these, it would not only be deployed for Anchorage Fire Department, it would be deployed for Girdwood, Chugiak. And you might not know it, but I think there's over 300 AEDs inside police cars. They would also be part of this leasing program. That would be part of that as well. We reached out to Chief Dahl, find out, are they worth it? Do you want to have it in there? It's something that we've been talking about at administration level. We've got some great information from Chief Hetrick's team. We really kind of talked to some of the folks that are outside the fire department that are in sort of this type of a business when we're looking to lease equipment, and it's leasing better than buying. There's pluses and minuses, but this is kind of an approach that's being proposed. And again, the way we put this together is this would be the package. If it gets approved, we would not issue the 400 that was in area-wide, and we would not issue the 280. All of that is also explained in the documents that we have. So again, not a bond prop, but if it happens, it will affect this bond, it will affect future bonds. So that's my summary of it as best that I can explain it. But I know that Chief Hetrick and the manager Bill has been putting a lot of time and thought into this. So anyway, that's kind of the summary of it. So if the Chief has something to add, that's what we have.
I'd like to provide just a little bit more of the origin story and the background. I had Lance include a picture on the next slide.
I'll do that because
I'll give you the next picture. So I have this button on my desk that somebody gave me once, which is but we've always done it this way. But so the origin of this story is that we've always bought this stuff and we've always bonded for it. And then earlier in the fall, the fire department said the vendor that sells us this stuff is newly willing to lease it all to us. And that will be better operationally, and it should be cheaper as compared to buying it all going forward. And I looked at them and I said, yeah, but the way the tax cap works, When you bond for it, I get tax dollars that I didn't have before. And if you want to lease it, we're all going to get for it. So even though it makes sense, I can't do it for you. Then I looked at my button and I remembered, but there's no reason we have to always do it that way. So this is the proposition that's going to be of a flavor that no one has ever seen before, and maybe this year's lease purchase proposition. That's going to get a head scratcher and we're going to have to try to explain to people. But the pitch is, you guys, the municipality voters, let me buy this stuff in small pieces year over year over year over year. Can I instead take that small bite and just enter into a lease agreement that's going to get us out of this buying it game for the next 10 years? If you assume that you were going to let me buy all this stuff anyway in small pieces, this should be the cheaper way. It should also be the better way because we'll have everything on one standard. We'll have different kinds of equipment all around the municipality. I think it ultimately kind of comes up to how do you want to divide this rather than do you want to do this at all. I think it's a defensible approach, but I'm happy to have the time to see.
So we have, as Assemblymember Kennedy mentioned earlier, we have struggled with the thought that buying monitors and buying the Lucas devices and stuff, which are low-level items, we still don't have the capital budget to purchase, so we've been bonding for those. And it's caused us issues over the past. When we end up, we buy 4 a year. So by the time we get through, 48 of them, it takes us 10 years to get through all of those. So Girdwood and Chudiak end up with we try not to give them the dregs, but they use them less. So they end up with sometimes the older equipment. All of our other apparatus outside of the ambulances end up with older equipment, different versions, unreliable. The maintenance for some of these, you guys know how maintenance heavy technology or high tech equipment can be. And that's only the Lucases and the life packs. We have no mechanism to fund a complete refresh of the AEDs that we need to do not only for Anchorage Fire Department, but also for PD, and the power loads and our journeys. One of our biggest issues, drivers for costs for the municipality are back-related injuries, joint-related injuries due to patient moving and lifting. The power load system actually allows a mechanical device to do all that work for us, and we have demonstrated reductions in patient moving and lifting injuries to our staff. So we want to continue to invest in that, but buying just the power load piece that installs into the ambulance is $30,000. We just don't have any other way to do that. We have been scraping the bottom of the barrel and foregoing some other operational expenses so that we can do that because we know it's important. This gives us the opportunity to have a complete set that covers all of our ambulances within the municipality, including all of our reserve apparatus and Chudiak and Girdwood. It also allows us to, if those need maintenance, we have somebody to do that. One of the other side benefits to this is because it's such a big package, the vendor, if we end up going, we'll have to go through the procurement process, but the current vendor we're looking at will actually hire someone to be here in town so that we have on-site maintenance. It doesn't have to get sent to Michigan for maintenance. We'll have a stock here, and this will keep us up and running. This also includes a complete refresh. So in 5 years, when a new model comes out, say they switch to the LifePak 22, we can do a complete refresh department-wide and go with the new LifePak 22s without additional cost. That cost is all included in the approximately $800,000 annual expense for the lease.
Thank you.
We think it's a good idea.
I have a couple questions. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I think you might have covered the question that the lease would include maintenance, so it would actually maybe save us money in the long run because we don't have to fix other stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Alatel?
Thank you. When will we kind of be up to date, like after how many years of the assessment, or would it be like almost immediately, like we'll just suddenly have a refresh of all new equipment muni-wide?
So, Ms. Zalatel, through the chair, that's the benefit of this. If it gets passed, we'll go through the procurement process. So I am estimating probably next October, November of 2020, they'll show up with a tractor trailer load of stuff and we'll roll it out. This is all somewhat equipment that we're used to, so we'll have a training program that goes with it. So by early January, probably January 21, we will be up and running and it will be seamless.
So is it fair to say if the $800,000 a year is approved by the voters, we can, that's kind of like just wholesale, there's no bits and pieces of this thing, we're just gonna roll
Yes.
all at once?
Yes,
Okay.
completely, and that's one of the things we like about it. With the bonding, we get new equipment, we get, about 10% of the equipment that we need every year, and it doesn't cover everything. So yeah, it takes us 10 years to replace everything, but they're not all on the same platform. This gets us immediate and on the same platform.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy?
Okay, well, I'm trying to kind of see what that means. So with the equipment that you currently have that is still good equipment, what happens to that? Are you still phasing in this new stuff to a certain extent? I mean, it sounds like you're just getting everything all in one fell swoop, but then if that's true, then you're still going to be on that, how do we refresh this a little bit at a time cycle? You would have to be refreshing everything every 5 years or 7 years or whatever the number was. Anyway.
So fortunately, right now, yes, we have, the equipment that we have on our ambulances is various years. Some of it, as I mentioned, 20 years old. So this would completely refresh and bring in everything in 5 years. If they come out with new models or whatever, somewhere we could do another complete refresh in 5 years. The lease program we're looking at allows us a complete refresh sometime within that 10-year period. So maybe in 5 years they come out with the LifePak 22s, we replace all of those. But in 7 years or 8 years, we replace all the power load gurneys. So within that time period, we get a complete refresh of all the equipment. So not only do we get the initial investment, but we get a complete refresh within that 10-year time period.
Okay, there is some phasing going on, just depending on the equipment. Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you. And so if we get all new equipment and it's all the same, then I would think that it would reduce the amount of training that you have to do, because if you have different types of equipment that's some's 20 years old, some's brand new, it's going to function differently. So you have to do more training so that everyone knows how to use all these pieces of equipment. So if you get all new, and you train them once, and I think that should help.
Mr. Peterson, through the chair, you are absolutely right. So I'm a fan of the whole program, but the key thing that I love about it is the fact that all 4 o'clock in the morning when we get up to go on a call and you're maybe at a different station because you traded with someone or reassignment, you'll be using the exact same type of equipment that you do at your primary station. And so we should experience less human errors because everybody will be trained on everything and it will be all similar. So that is my number one highest priority, is reducing the potential for human error because we're using different equipment. The other thing that this helps save, and I think you understand that everyone in the municipality is short-staffed, this means that we don't every single year have to go through the purchasing process to buy new equipment. So it saves time in the purchasing side of things. The maintenance you already mentioned, because it's maintained by outside people, this saves our shop maintenance time. And so across the board, there are savings, and that even some that we hadn't even expected. But training time is a huge part of that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy?
Following along with that, training costs. So it sounds like we might be retraining everybody here pretty quickly once you get all that equipment. So is the training cost, this initial training cost, is that covered through this tax? Or how is that being accounted for?
Ms. Kennedy, through the chair, the training cost is rolled into our normal training program because we have to offer a certain number of continuing education, and we would just roll that into that normal training system, so there wouldn't be any additional cost. If we didn't do this program, we would still have to train on the LifePaks every single year. This time, it's just a new piece of equipment.
Thank you. Anything else?
So just to remind you, the ballot propositions that we introduced on the 17th of December, those that are not changing, the police, the fire, the area-wide public safety, unless, as Assemblymember Kennedy mentioned, we changed that one, and you can do it then. And you can approve those on the 14th. The ones that you have to wait till the 18th, the 28th they're going to get introduced, will be the road bond, because we've upped the amount. So that one will get introduced, even though we introduced it on the 17th. The new one's going to get on the 14th. Same thing with the life safety access. Introduce it, act on the 28th. You could wait and do them all on the 28th, or you could do, all of them but two on the 14th. And similarly, this AO that was just mentioned, it'll get introduced on the 14th. Have to act on the 28th in order to get the ballot before the. And so on my list, I have some questions from Mr. Dunbar about leasing, purchasing police cars in the past, and then I have some information about the life safety access roads, and we'll wait to hear from Assemblymember Kennedy if she has some more information. If you guys have any other questions, please let me know. We'll try to get you responses before Tuesday night so that you're ready to go on Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy?
So, thank you. And mine, yes, I had that question about the 100 million that you might have.
Oh, yes.
That we might have kind of on the books but not yet sold. Can we get a bit of a sense of what those projects are and whether or not those are at some point actually going to be sold, so then they become debt to the community? So
We can answer all three of those things. Yeah.
Right.
And
Thank you.
a lot of work went into this. I mean, while I share, a lot of work went in through our friends at Public Finance, our bond council. I mean, we really kind of made them run through the loops here recently, and some of the departments. So I really appreciate Alex's team and the departments that helped us get this stuff together for you. So thank you very much.
And bond council will be present in person on Tuesday evening. That should be good.
Thank you. Ms. LaFrance?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since we have a couple minutes, I have a general question. As far as the bond totals, I mean, is it accurate to think of them as a not to exceed amount, because the projects, well, sometimes they're not issued, and the projects sometimes come in under, and there is some flexibility. I guess that's a piece I don't completely understand. There's some flexibility to move money among projects,
Yes.
but you can't add a new project necessarily once you've already identified them on what's been voted on. Is that correct?
No. For roads and for parks, the language specifically says we're asking for a total amount of 43 or for 3.9. We can't issue any more than that amount. You're getting,
Right.
That's the limit. We
Right.
can't. So that's the amount. Now, the projects that we intend to do are all of those ones in there. If we come in and we get a better bid on one, and this is basically how we've been operating roads and parks for those particular reasons. If we get better bids and we have the ability to do another project in the capital improvement
Oh,
program,
that's right.
we
Okay.
can go forward and if we get better bids, we'll do 15. If we get better bids, we will pick up. But based on what we know, we wouldn't do that. That's for roads and parks. For area-wide facilities, it's specific. It basically says these are the ones we're going to do. We're not going to go rebuild Spinard Rec Center. We're going to do these.
Thanks for that refresher.
Yeah.
Thanks. So before I close this work session, just a quick note on the next two work sessions. So we have a work session on the alcohol taxes and a work session on the sales tax. Both of them are going to be shortened work sessions because we've done quite a bit of work on these already. So just be prepared for them to be short and brief, and so be succinct for these next two work sessions.